I pledge allegiance
To the
to the
flag
flag
of the
of the
United States,
of America, and to the
and to the
republic
republic
for which it stands,
one
One
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty
and
and
justice
justice
for
for
all.
all. And I should have asked if we are on the live stream on YouTube.
Yes, we are. I'm just verifying the audio going through.
Thank you. Hopefully they didn't.
We're all set.
Great, excellent. Okay, thank you. If we do have anybody viewing or listening through the YouTube channel, this is the Seymour Board of Education Finance Committee meeting, and we will probably go for about 20 minutes or so and then break, and then we'll be back for the regularly scheduled March meeting. I do not have any public comment for this evening. I'm not sure if I don't believe we're allowing verbal public comment during committee meetings, but well, not that we're not allowing. We have not set the meeting up to do so, but I did not receive any in email. So we will move on to discussion and possible action about the financial management summary. And I do want to say before I turn it over to Sherry Holmes, that thank you for all of the collaboration and the work that you have done with us. This will be our last Finance Committee meeting with Sherry, and I wanted to extend my heartfelt thanks for jumping in really with both feet. I guess it was nearly 2 years ago, Sherry, right?
well, it's about a year and a half. It was heading towards the 2-year mark.
Yeah, headed towards the 2-year mark. So wonderful budget cycle under your belt, and you really got us in a place with the new financial statement formats and helping us understand what's in the numbers and working towards making sure encumbrances are done accurately. So we really appreciate all your help for the past year and a half and wish you the best.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, so if we take a look at the financial management summary, I will start out by saying that we only just received the excess cost grant monies on Thursday of last week. So there was not an opportunity to kind of get that into this month to book it. It has to go to the town first, and then the town passes it to us. And because of that, we did not feel like it would be smart to start making solid estimated projections of how much we would be over or under in any particular line item for the year. But Mrs. Holmes and I connected, and we will be sure that that is complete within the next week or so. It'll, when I say complete, it doesn't mean it's set in stone, but we'll have something to start with that we can adjust as we move forward. So we've always got our eye on where we're going to end up in June. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. Let me start off by telling you how much our excess cost amount is for the first payment in February. It's $549,793. And this is exactly what I'm going to be booking this week. It will show up in the March financial data. And I will book it directly to tuition, since that is where we need it the most at this point. The second amount that comes in around May, I think, whoever is in my seat will take a look at between the tuition and the transportation and maybe divvy it up depending on what the situation is. But I think if we stay with the tuition at this point, that will be very helpful to us overall in the budget. I did point out to you that we did present our budget to the town finance board, and budget for 21-22 in the amount of $35,552,977. Represents a 2.55% increase, which equates to a dollar amount increase of $882.568 over last year's budget. The amount for the ESSER grant, number 2, we have been awarded $1,019,026. Districts were told that we were supposed to get this information for application opening prior to March 1st, 2021. I can tell you as of today, we do not have any of that information yet. So we are all still waiting to go into the e-grants management system and put that application in. But in the meantime, we're formulating a plan for the funds to be expended moving forward. We're taking a look at a lot of different things. And so we'll be able to have something firmed up, and I think the 17th. By March 17th, you should have something to take a look at. And then hopefully within this week or next week, we can have that application in the system so we can start to formulate the documents that need to be generated in order to apply for that amount of money. The big spreadsheet that everybody was anticipating, the CRF, Coronavirus Expenditure, Detailed Expenditure Spreadsheet, was finished today, matter of fact, and I uploaded it to the e-grant system. And I'll be happy to say tonight, I already got approval from the state of Connecticut on the total amount. They love the spreadsheet.
Good.
All I can tell you is there's a lot of details on that spreadsheet.
It's great.
And you know why it took this long to get it done. I mean, they said to put as much details on the spreadsheet as possible. Well, they should have said that to me because they got it all. I mean, everything, So, and what's funny is the program manager, Lee, she called me today and she said, "Can I share your spreadsheet with other districts?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Why not?"
That's great.
Guys,
Kudos to you. That's great.
And the thing of it is she told me early on, because we have the amount that we got was very good. She said, "Oh, Seymour's going to be under a lot of scrutiny." Yeah, well, you know what? That prompted me in my brain to say, okay, we're going to give you all that data.
Right.
In detail form. And what helped me was we had the software system to do it.
That's
Financial
great.
software system.
That's great.
Yeah. So all the details that you see on that spreadsheet come directly from the Infinite Visions financial management system. We really had an extension.
Let me interrupt 1 minute.
Okay.
Sure, you should have sold that to the state for other people, and we got to get more money.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I should have. Yeah. I tried that avenue. Anyway, districts as a whole, we had an extension on this timeline. Initially, it was due the end of March. They now are giving districts until October 31st, 2021. And I let you know that because a lot of people are asking me, well, when is this spreadsheet due, And I was shooting for it to be done, obviously, by the 1st of March, because I didn't want to hold out any longer. Even if I was staying, you'd still have it because it was important. And I'm thankful that I got the approval on the money now. So it's just a matter of cutting us a check at this point, which is really good. The expenditure summary report, I did email to you the year-to-date activity for the fiscal year ending February 28th, 2021. And in addition, I did send you the check registers that we had thus far issued from February 1st, 2021 to February 28th, 2021. In the key points to note section, I kind of went through a series of accounts. When I do those spreadsheets for surplus and deficit, I will do that in the same fashion. I'll bring you through certified salaries, non-certified salaries, and those kind of things, and point out where I think we're going to be at before the end of the fiscal year. there's really nothing noteworthy to say among these paragraphs other than we got our first excess cost payment. That's great. Gonna book it. It's approximately what I thought we would get, so that's a good thing. The surplus accounts, which I've always said before, is going to be bus fuel, electricity, and heating fuel, and it looks like they're trending to be the case moving forward. I will try to take a look at all the invoices with the electricity and with the fuel account. We've virtually spent very little money in, so I will try to get a better handle on what's going to be left over there.
Great.
I think that was it for me,
Okay.
but I'd open it up to any questions, please.
Great, thank you. Beth or Ed, do you have any questions?
Hi,
Well,
Kristen. This is
Go first,
Beth.
Chris.
Go
Go
ahead,
ahead,
Beth.
Beth.
Okay,
Go ahead.
sorry. Thank you. Sherry, I know in the past we've talked about the transportation line item and negotiations with All Star. Can you give any update on that?
We did receive one credit for $15,000. She's going to do credits in increments throughout the year because what she's doing with other districts is the same thing. If anything should happen or transportation should slow up and there should be some savings there, she is going to turn it over to the district. So I would hope that, from here on in, that it would only increase beyond the 15,000, but I just don't know for sure. I will try to, touch base with her before I leave. Just if she could give me a ballpark on that. It really all depends on how we go back to school in person. You know what I mean? If it's a gradual or if it's all at once and, we got to make some decisions, that's what's going to drive it.
Okay,
But I'm hopeful that it will be more.
okay. Anything else, Beth?
Nope, that was it.
Great. Mr. Stramello, Ed?
Well, Beth stole my question, which is fine.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I mean, you would hope, and I'm sure there's going to be a public feeling that there should be more savings, but obviously we haven't convinced people or explained to people completely that there's other costs that we had to add on because of remote learning teachers, substitutes, and all that kind of stuff. But we can only do the best we can do.
Yes, that's basically what I've been doing, is trying to work with her as best as I can. So she understands the question, the concern. She knows districts are looking for more, and she's willing to work with all of us. So I think that's a good thing moving forward.
And is it the case still that we're even for the schools, or even when we were in hybrid, and we still have 2 schools in hybrid, we're still running all of the buses that we would run if we were back at school full-time, full in person? Is that correct?
Yeah, we went back to the initial schedule.
Yeah. Right. So they're really, the savings is truly only for the days that we have been truly remote. And,
right, exactly.
Where
Where we
it feels
were
like that
down.
was a big span, we have to consider that it was over the holidays, and we wouldn't. So it's not quite as much
Right.
action and use of buses as people think.
Right, but this is something to think about. What she said to me, and it is what I'm thinking is going to generate the savings and the credits to us, is if they have to quarantine a bus driver and they take a bus offline and they combine the routes, or able to combine the amount of kids to one bus, because some of the buses are literally half full. I mean, and others are full. And so if that happens, then we don't get charged for that bus that's offline. So she's
Right.
going to calculate it out that way.
Has
I
that
think that's-
happened? Has that
Um,
happened?
Yeah, there was a couple times it has happened so far. So
Okay,
she's going to calculate it out in a rate differential, and she feels that she'll be able to give more back
okay,
that way. You know, you never know. I mean, it could happen on a daily basis. But once everybody gets their vaccine, she's hoping that, you know,
Yeah.
this will increase the amount of drivers that will be able to be available.
That would be nice.
And that's her hope.
Okay,
We'll see.
If I could jump in here,
Yeah.
Kristen.
Yeah.
I happened to see a couple of days ago in the Republican ads for All-Star looking for bus drivers, and we were listed. Seymour was one of the communities listed as they're looking for additional bus drivers or what have you. So, I mean, I think that's important for people to understand that there are not people that are lined up at the door
No,
wanting to be a school bus driver.
yes,
And-
absolutely. And
Yeah.
that's the same way with paras and substitute teachers. I mean, you know, they're all hard to come by. And the biggest thing is, well, when I get my vaccine, I'll see where, you know, I'm at. She did tell me there is a handful of drivers that she has found, and they just need to go through training before they can actually go into driving a bus and whatnot. So that's got to happen before we see more help on the way.
okay. All right, I don't have any comments. I said what I wanted to share with you, Sherry, at the top of the meeting. But Ed is our full board chairman. If there's anything you wanted to share, if you're going to save it for the regular board meeting.
Yeah, I think, Kristen, anything that I need to share would be
Peter.
more appropriate for the full board meeting.
You got it.
You're
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
Okay,
So we move the financial statement to the full board for approval then?
yes,
Okay,
yes, I'll, let me go back to my, flip back to my,
the motion, yeah.
let's see, where did that go? Got my full board motion up. Yep, so I would entertain a motion to move to the full board for approval and acceptance, the financial management summary ending February 28th, 2021.
This is Beth Mysteric. I'll make that motion.
And
Thank you,
this
Beth.
is Ed Stramella will second that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Smerl. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you very
As,
much.
Okay,
I
no
appreciate
problem.
that.
So as mentioned, I don't have any further comments. If the superintendent or the associate superintendent does, I'll turn it over to Rhonda.
No comment other than I appreciate your comments at the beginning, and we would sincerely like to echo that Sherry will be missed. She has taken an opportunity that's closer to home and less days of the week, which sounds very exciting to all of us. And, you know, she has definitely made our district better in the short time that she's been with us.
I would
And
agree.
there's a lot that she's put into place that we will benefit from. And she's only a
Thank you.
phone call away. I have her number.
Yeah, I know. I know you all have my number.
And Vonda, when you say we would all be excited, what I heard was we're all a little jealous. That's what I
Yes, not even like.
I'm a little
All right.
shocked, to say the least.
We
All
wish
right,
her nothing
so-
but the best.
Thank you. I
Absolutely,
appreciate that.
absolutely. With
Absolutely.
that, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. Second? I'll second it.
I'll-
Why not, right? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Okay, I'll see everybody in about 8 minutes.
All right.
All
Thank you.
right, take
Bye-bye.
care.
Good evening.
Hi, Jim. Just keep in mind, this stream is live right
Oh,
now
that's good.
between the meetings.
Live is always good. Is it live or is it Memorex? I'm going to mute myself.
Good evening, all.
How you doing?
Doing well. Sorry I missed the finance meeting. I had
Evening.
dealing with the health district.
That's fun.
Okay, I think that's. I think I'm going to call the meeting to order. That we have enough, and if other people need to join us, they can. So this is the regular meeting of the Seymour Board of Education of March 1st, 2021. Calling to order 7:32. If we could please stand to pledge the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, we will start with our high school representatives, and Zach, you are up first.
Sorry. Hi. So a lot has been going on throughout the halls of Seymour High during like the last month. We officially have a date for prom, and the date is May 15th at the AquaTurf. And the SAT is scheduled for March 24th for all juniors. And the student council is working with the school administration to plan senior day, where they can plan some fun activities and finally be able to paint the rock. And the student council has also wrapped up selling the chocolate roses for Valentine's Day.
Well, thank you, Karina. Any questions for Karina before we move on to Zach? Okay, Zach, you're up.
Also, going up with what she said, the students and staff are encouraged to wear red and donate in the CAF or the main office on March 2nd for cohort 1 and March 5th for cohort 2 to raise money for the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. Yearbook has completed all the forms for superlatives and senior quotes. For sports, the golf team is starting within the next couple weeks. For indoor track, the athletes are working out on based off of their assigned cohorts. This has been done in the CAF. For the cheer team, they have been practicing for the second week in a row in person. So far, it's been going very well. On March 13th, they have a cheer team. The cheer team will be competing virtually with schools throughout the state. For basketball, both the girls and boys have been doing extremely well. The girls' basketball team is 4-1. The boys' basketball team is 5-0. Both with games tonight. Players have said it has been difficult wearing masks while playing, but they have been taking all the precautions necessary to prevent the spread of COVID to ensure that they can continue to play. Yeah. That's it.
That concludes yours, Zach?
Yeah.
How did your interview go with the Valley Indy?
Oh, that was great.
I might ask.
That was good. Answered a lot of questions about the rock. Hope to get that really soon.
Okay. Any other questions from board members for either of our representatives? Okay. I don't see any hands. I don't see anybody indicating to me that they would like to ask either of our two representatives questions. Do I see Mr. Freund?
Yes, I just want to also say that we do have a varsity basketball player, Mr. Dion Perkins, who had scored 1,000 points in his career. He's the 8th boy in Seymour's history to score 1,000 points. Oh, very incredible, very proud of him and the work that he's done. And he and the team are doing really well this year. Unfortunately, you guys can't get out to see games, either men's or women's, but certainly feel free to watch us virtually. All the games are streamed live virtually on YouTube. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Freund, is Mr. DeStacy here, or is he at the girls' basketball game?
He's at the girls' basketball game.
Okay, because there I received an email concerning a Miss Sarowich on the basketball team who did something that I thought was outstanding in one of the games. Do you have information that you want to share on that, Mr. Freund, or do you want me to try to remember what I remember?
I would definitely prefer that you try to remember what you remember. I do know that our girls have been recognized for showing very high level of sportsmanship in one game after the halftime. They call it halftime, Mr. Stromell, in basketball?
I'm not sure if it happened at halftime or the beginning of the game, but I can share what I heard from Mr.
Well, I might be talking about another incident where one of the coaches on the opposing teams had an asthma attack. And in order so our girls agreed that it was okay to delay the start of the time, and they were all recognized for their sportsmanship, and our coaches as well. It was very nice.
Okay, no, the thing that I was told about, that there was a young lady on one of the teams, and I don't remember in particular, who was challenged, and she was allowed to start the game, and the agreement was to allow her to score the first basket of the game. And then when the young lady tried to do it, she missed, and Miss Sarowich, by knocking the ball out of bounds off of herself, allowed the other team to inbound it again, and they got it to the young lady, and the young lady was able to score probably her first points ever in the game. And I think that the quick thinking of Miss Sarowich and Mr. Freund, it's Mackenzie, correct?
Correct.
I just think it was phenomenal that she had the insight to be able to think of that quickly and allow this young lady to probably have one of the highlights of her basketball career by scoring a game in a varsity game. So that shows you the caliber of the kids that we have in the Seymour school system. So,
and she's a representative of many.
Right.
Students.
So I just thought that was phenomenal, and congratulations to her. Okay, moving along, Mr. Champagne, it's your time in the sun.
Thanks, Ed. I just have one, and I believe she's here, Mrs. White, so you can go ahead.
Hi. Elizabeth White, 49 Sagamore Drive. I'd like to begin by commending the Board of Ed for their time and very thoughtful discussions leading up to this point, as well as the teachers that my children have this year. They're taking action without waiting and have provided the best learning environment, especially given the circumstances. And I also want to comment that I'm continually impressed by the administration at the middle school and their anticipation of what's to come. The problem solving in advance of situations has been a trend that I've noticed in listening to the meetings, whether it pertains to curriculum, social emotional learning, procedures dealing with COVID. They're ready, they're waiting. So I believe they should be commended. This does seem, though, in contrast to the lack of planning in other areas. Unfortunately, my family did have COVID the first weekend in February. When we reported it on Super Bowl Sunday, I was astonished that the district was unprepared to contact trace. How do we not have seating charts on buses? How do we not have access to seating charts in any classroom in the district? The fact that I contacted the district as soon as I had results at 10:45 in the morning, I find it inexcusable that 2 buildings had to be shut down the next day. This should have been a given for a district that takes safety as its #1 priority. I'm looking for members of our administrative teams to start being proactive. Stop the laundry list of excuses, stop the reports and building updates and finding solutions. I'm urging the Board of Ed to create a hiring committee to include all stakeholders when it comes to time to hire the next superintendent. Parents should be included, and our voices have been largely ignored this year. Finally, I'm looking for the number of positive cases of both students and staff during distance learning versus in-person learning to see if it supports an eventual return for the high school. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ed, that's all I have for tonight.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Okay, the next agenda item is the consent agenda. What is the board's pleasure? Somebody needs to speak up.
Peter,
Move to
Cube,
accept
I'll make a
the-
motion.
Jim
We accept the,
Garofalo.
All right, hold it. I got 2 people
as
speaking out.
presented.
I got 2 people speaking at one time. Go ahead, Peter.
I'll make a motion that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second to that motion?
Jim Garofalo will second.
Okay, is there any discussion needed on the motion? Okay, so we will do our roll call as usual. Mrs. Bruno,
Kristen Bruno, yes.
Mr. Champagne,
Chris Champagne, yes.
Mr. Garofalo,
Jim Garofalo, yes.
Ms. Harmeling,
Yes.
Mr. Hatfield,
Jay Hatfield, yes.
Mr. Kubik,
Peter Kubik, yes.
Mrs. Nesteriak,
Beth Mysteriak, yes.
Mr. Stanek,
Fred Stanek, yes.
and Mr. Stramello votes yes. Motion passes unanimously. Recommended actions. We have motions there. What is the board's pleasure?
I'll make a motion to move that pursuant to Connecticut General Statute, Section 10-151, the Board of Education will non-renew the teaching contracts of Violetta Konopka and Tyler Moreau at the end of the 2020-2021 school year as recommended by the superintendent. I further move that the superintendent be directed to communicate this action in writing to Violetta Konopka and Tyler Moreau, and that the superintendent of schools be authorized to respond on behalf of the board to any request, if required by law, or for other data which may be forthcoming from the teacher and or his representative pursuant to applicable provisions of Connecticut General Statute, Section 10-151. And that is non-renewal of long-term substitute teachers.
Thank you, Ms. Harmling. Is there a second to that motion?
Jim Garofalo will second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Garofalo. Any discussion needed on that motion? Any discussion needed on that motion?
Ed, this is Beth.
Yes, Beth.
Can I just get clarification that these, are there other long-term substitutes? Or is this in totality, or can the superintendent speak a little bit to the motion?
Yes, he can.
Those are the only long-term substitutes we currently have that fall under that.
Okay, Mrs. Nesteriak?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have a question? Yes, Ms. Harmling.
I have a question. I understand that there's a very specific definition of long-term substitute. I'm just wondering if these teachers have an interest of becoming permanent building subs for the remainder of the year. It just seems like if we've got people who know our schools and our students in, why would we not keep them to try to, ease up some, give us more flexibility in the buildings that they're in?
Mr. Wilson, if you would answer that, please.
So that's through the end of this school year.
Oh,
that-
my mistake. Never mind then. I
No
see that.
problem.
I see that at the top. It wasn't built into the motion, but I see it at the top. Yep, no
Yep.
problem. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Mr. Garfalo?
No, I have no questions.
Okay, all righty. So then I will call for a roll call vote again. Mrs. Bruno,
Yes.
Mr. Champagne,
Chris Champagne, yes?
Mr. Garofalo,
Jim Garofalo, yes?
Ms. Harmling,
Ms. Harmeling, yes, and I see it is in the motion. I clearly didn't hear what I was reading, so.
that's okay. Mr. Jay Hatfield, I'm sorry.
Mr. Hatfield, yes.
Mr. Kubik,
Peter Cubic, yes.
Mrs. Nesteriak,
Beth Mysteriak, yes.
Mr. Stanek,
Fred Stanek, yes.
and Mr. Stramel votes yes. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we go to 6B. What is the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, Jim Garofalo.
Yes, Jim.
I will move that pursuant to Connecticut General Statute 10-151, the Seymour Board of Education will non-renew the teaching contracts of Margaret Bruce, Lynn Emra, Maureen Fox, Lisa Goodfellow, Susan Callows, John Livornia, Susan Luchuk, Melissa Marini, and Stephanie Pelliccio at the end of the 2021 school year, as recommended by the superintendent. I further move that the superintendent be directed to communicate in writing to, or the decision in writing to Margaret Bruce, Lynn Emra, Maureen Fox, Lisa Goodfellow, Susan Callows, John Livornia, Susan Luchuk, Melissa Marini, and Stephanie Pelliccio, and that the superintendent of schools be authorized to respond on behalf of the board to any request, if required by law, or for other data which may be forthcoming from the teacher and or her representative pursuant to applicable provisions of Connecticut General Statute, Section 10-151. I'm glad I don't have emphysema.
Okay, I will just, if I could just correct Mr. Garofalo, I believe it's Sarah Lucha, not Susan.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, is there a second to Mr. Garofalo's motion? Is there a second to the motion?
Second, Jay Hatfield.
Thank you, Mr. Hatfield. Is there any discussion needed on the motion by Mr. Garofalo, seconded by Mr. Hatfield? Okay, hearing none, I will do roll call again. Mrs. Bruno,
Yes.
Mr. Champagne,
Chris Champagne, yes.
Mr. Garofalo,
Garofalo, yes.
Ms. Harmling,
Yes.
Mr. Hatfield,
Jay Hatfield, yes.
Mr. Kubik,
Peter Cubic, yes.
Mrs. Nesteriak,
Beth Mysteriak, yes.
Mr. Stanek,
Fred Stanek, yes.
and Mr. Stramel votes yes. Motion carries unanimously. We are now to 6C. What is the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, Jim Garofalo.
Okay,
I move that pursuant to Connecticut General Statute, Section 10-151, the Seymour Board of Education will non-renew the teaching contracts of Deborah Rickard, Jack Rocco, and Max Salazar at the end of the 2020-2021 school year as recommended by the superintendent. I further move that the superintendent be directed to communicate this action in writing to Deborah Rickard, Jack Rocco, and Max Salazar, and that the superintendent of schools be authorized to respond on behalf of the board to any request, if required by law, or for other data which may be forthcoming from the teacher and or his or her representative pursuant to applicable provisions of Connecticut General Statutes, section 10-151.
Thank you, Mr. Garofalo. Is there a second to that motion?
Beth Mysteriak.
Second, Jay Hatfield.
Well, I heard Beth first, Jay. Go ahead, Beth.
Beth Mysteriak, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Nesteriak. Okay, any discussion needed on this motion made by Mr. Garofalo and seconded by Mrs. Nesteriak? Okay, I don't see any. I will do a roll call again. Mrs. Bruno,
Kristen Bruno, yes.
Mr. Champagne,
Chris Champagne, yes.
Mr. Garofalo,
Jim Garofalo, yes.
Ms. Harmling,
Ms. Harmeling, yes.
Mr. Hatfield,
Jay Hatfield, yes.
Mr. Kubik,
Peter Kubik, yes.
Mrs. Nesteriak,
Beth Mysteriak, yes.
Mr. Stanek,
Fred Stanek votes yes.
and Mr. Stramello votes yes also. Motion carries unanimously. Moving along to 7, and 7A is Technology Committee meeting minutes for February 22nd. And I believe that Ms. Harmon, you are the chair of that committee. Would you like to address that report, please?
Yeah, I'll start by making the motion, then we can go into, oh, it's not, no motion needed. Okay, so yeah, we had one of our lengthier Curriculum and Technology Committee meetings on last Monday. We had a pretty packed agenda. We did, the first thing we did was look at some assessments that Mr. Garofalo asked Mrs. Tenza and the administration to put together. So we had a nice broad cross-section of subjects and grade levels, and had a conversation about how we were, looking for critical thinking and different things like that. And we talked a fair amount about the use of online assessments versus the paper assessments or the more project-based assessments. So that's well reflected in the minutes. Then we went on to talk about the failure rates. Some of the information that was shared earlier, collected from the middle and the high school administrators. Failures in both schools are up pretty significantly. It's important to note the administration pointed out to us that we were looking at number of failing classes, not necessarily number of students who are failing. But there's definitely more students this year in both schools that are failing multiple classes. This is not just a Seymour problem. This has been in the news and in the media across the country. We certainly didn't come to any conclusion. There was really no conclusion to come to, although I, really struggle with the notion that for the high school students, this is something that permanently impacts their transcript. So I hope that there's conversation at the state level, quite frankly, about or the national level even, about how to treat this current year of schooling. Because there are schools all across the country that haven't been in school at all, and kids are failing there as well. Then we also did a very quick revision, not a quick revision, a quick review of our textbook adoption policy. We did get an email afterwards. None of us were able to get onto the CABE website before that meeting and pull down the more current policy, but CABE has definitely gone from having it be a textbook adoption policy to more of a adoption of core curriculum materials. It's a pretty detailed policy from CABE, but it really, in my opinion anyway, does a nice job reflecting the new realities of the types of materials that are used to inform curriculum, or used to enact curriculum rather. And this discussion came up because I've been increasingly worried that we kind of don't have a lot of visibility into the core instructional materials that are being used, because more and more classrooms are not using textbooks. And again, that's a national trend as well. That's not unique to Seymour. So that will be forwarded onto the policy committee to take a look at what they want to do with that CABE policy vis-a-vis our existing policy, and they'll come back with recommendations to the full board. And the last thing we talked about was the middle school schedule discussion. And I definitely don't want to go into the details of this, but Mr. Stramello, if you wanted to have one of our administrators speak to it, I will just say that I'm pretty excited about this new schedule. It takes the total number of, keeps the total number of periods the same, 7 periods in a day plus lunch, but there will be a homeroom every day for the students where they can, do different types of things, and there's not going to be a drop one. So every teacher will see their students every day for their core classes, and the Unified Arts will be on that same everyday rotation. And the way that this is able to come to fruition is that world language will go to an every other day schedule, which at first I was like, oh, how's that going to work? But Mrs. Calvert was on the Curriculum Technology Committee meeting, and she, alongside Mrs. Tenza, said that it's really not a problem. And then the more I thought about it, our students are taking 9th grade Spanish, or hopefully French, spread out across both 7th and 8th grade. So they certainly can get through the same amount of material as they did, as do the 9th graders. So all in all, it was a good meeting, and I encourage everybody to sort of explore the background documents as well as the minutes. And if there are any questions, shoot.
Any questions for our chairperson or our other 2 members, Mr. Garofalo or Mrs. Bruno or Mrs. Tenza? Any comments from Mrs. Tenza on that curriculum committee meeting?
Other than a huge thank you for the teachers and administrators for the work that they put into the scheduling committee at the middle school, and a lot of work went into the assessment gathering for the board to be able to review. And you know what? We have a great subcommittee. The board members are very interested in what's happening in our schools, and they all usually run late, and we look at that as a good thing.
Mr. Wilson?
No, other than kudos to all the hard work and efforts, and thank you for that curriculum subcommittee meeting. I know there was a lot of topics thrown at them, and I know there was a lot of great discussion back and forth between the subcommittee members, the administrative team, and the associate superintendent. So thank you for all who participated in that.
And I'll have to admit, I miss being on that committee. But, I can't be every place every single time. So I congratulate the committee members and the staff for working collaboratively. And that is one of the most exciting of the committee meetings, if I can use that term, exciting. Okay, moving, any other board members wishing to comment or ask questions? Okay, thank you. Moving right along to the superintendent vacancy. Mr. Hatfield, I will go first if you do not mind.
No, please do.
Okay, after our deadline of Friday, we had one a proposal, and that was from CABE. I took this morning to spend some time on the computer, and I reached out to NASDAQ, and I spoke to a person there. I reached out to a Hazard Young, Altea and Associates out of Illinois, and they responded. I also reached out to CES, and they will respond. And I also just got an email a little while ago from school leadership who responded to my request for a proposal. So I'm happy to say that instead of having one, we now have those 4 others. So we will now have 5, which gives us a better chance of deciding which one fits us as a board. And as we did when we hired Mr. Wilson, we brought in 3 different firms. We interviewed the 3 different firms, and then the board made a decision on which of the 3 firms to hire to do our superintendent's search. And I pushed it because I get a little nervous that June 30th will be here before I blink. And, I want for us to be as positive, not to be scrambling as the way some districts. But when I looked online and looked other places, we are not out there by ourselves. There's many movements and changes in superintendencies in the state of Connecticut. So we are not an outsider by any means. Mr. Hatfield, do you want to add anything to mine on the, on that before I ask for any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to defer quick to Mrs. Holmes to make sure that, or ask kind of the next steps. Mrs. Holmes has done a tremendous job of putting out the RFP. She, I was getting nervous, and she quickly communicated to us at about 4:34 p.m. on Friday as to where we stood, and we had one person. So Mrs. Holmes, just in the, sense of keeping everything status quo, do we have to rebid it, or, because I know the one person that did put in didn't have all their materials together at the right time. They were going to send it to us, but I'm just going to ask for a quick update from Mrs. Holmes.
It's basically your choice at this point, whether you want to rebid or not. I would probably say we should put a revised RFP together just to go out and bid, because now we've got these 4 firms that potential are going to, give us a proposal. As always, in the back of my mind is that if they were to do some research or whatever, I want to make sure we're above board with everybody, and so that the one firm will not say, oh, well, you weren't part of the initial RFP. So if you want, I can work with you and Ed to put out something again really quick. I mean, I would just do it within a week's time, to have everybody submit there by such a date of next week, if you want to do that. I think it would be appropriate.
If I could respond first, Jay, the people that I contacted either via email or on the phone, I told them that if they're interested, I would like a proposal by Friday. And maybe we should wait for Friday before we go again, because if we get all 4 and the one from Cave 5, I would think would be sufficient unless board members disagree with that. Jay? Anyone else? Yes, Kristen.
I was going to wait for the other board members.
I saw Kristen Bruno raise her hand.
Do we just have to do something formally to indicate the deadline's been extended?
Well,
Yeah.
I did, as I said, speak to one person definitely, and I told the other ones in my email that I was looking for it by Friday.
But we may have to do a public statement that we've extended it in case there's a firm you didn't talk to that would be interested.
Okay, good point. So Mrs. Holmes, could you take care of that then?
Yes, I can.
Thank you,
All
Mrs.
right,
Bruno.
so-
Anyone else?
You're welcome.
Mr. Champagne.
Go ahead.
So just a quick question. I guess it's 2 parts. How much does this push us back? And really the reason why I'm asking that is because most superintendents, if they're looking to come and already have an existing contract, don't they mostly have 90-day clause in their contract? So wouldn't we want to start interviewing not only the firms, but also potential candidates before the end of this month?
I mean, ideally, yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Any other board members?
Well, if I could, Mr. Schmello?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Harnling.
I mean, one of the things that we have not even yet talked about is what kind of general process we will go through. And I know that the search firm that we hire will aid and assist us in that. But I mean, for purposes of letting the community know, I mean, Mr. Champagne, to your point, there's not a chance we'll be interviewing anybody by the end of this month. I mean, there's due diligence that we have to do. We have to decide what kind of feedback we want. When we did our superintendent search 4 years ago, we did a community survey. We may or may not want to do that again. We might want to do focus groups. So in addition to finding a firm to help us search, and that firm will need time to go through resumes and have conversations on their own, we need to do some work internally. So we should talk about that as a board sooner rather than later.
Through the chair.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Hatfield.
Thank you, Mrs. Harmling. I believe that a lot of that stuff, as you remember from the last time, will happen once we start to narrow down our focus on the firms. And I think thanks to Mr. Stramello's due diligence there, that we were able to contact some more people. And when we put out the RFP or extend the RFP, I think that'll give us some leeway to be able to have those conversations in our workshops. If you remember last time, I think we had a couple, I looked back in my emails from Mr. Patorti previously, and we had a little bit of a not wiggle room, but we had some of those conversations in our workshops once we met as a committee of the whole to discuss who we were going to have. Go ahead.
If I could through the chair, but we don't need to wait until we have a search firm hired before we have a board discussion on how we want to approach this. I mean, we were in a little bit of a unique situation when we did the hiring 4 years ago, because there was no one on the board who had gone through a superintendent search before. All of our superintendent's positions were filled by, internal. So it was brand new for all of us, but we've got 6 of us on the board who have gone through the process before. So I hope that we're not going to wait until we are having a meeting about what search firm to use before we just talk internally about what we want, what the process that we want to go through. You know what I mean? Because it was all brand new. We wouldn't even know where to start 4 years ago. Now we're in a little bit of a different situation.
So through the chair, if I may, what I think I'm hearing, if that's correct, is that maybe we should have a quick committee of the whole meeting for us to kind of, and I have to ask, I think the chair, Mr. Wilson, would that be considered a workshop or would that be considered a meeting? I have to just double check that part, but, or maybe Mrs. Harmon, you remember.
Yeah, there's actually no such thing as a workshop, like under Robert's Rules of Order. I mean, even the Finance Committee workshops, they are all meetings. But since we are an employee of a committee of the whole, Mr. Stramello, the reason why we did that is because those meetings can be held as a working session of the board. They don't have to be public posted meetings. Is that correct, Mr. Stramello?
I believe you're right on that, yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Wilson, do you want to add anything with your experience in law classes?
It's a tough one. I do believe, you do have a subcommittee as well where you can get some of that work done. Obviously, you want more board input. So the term workshop and its comments for an entire board, it could come under a full board meeting where the majority could also be spent in executive session because you are discussing strategies, which would be one of the reasons to go into an executive session if every board member wanted to have a voice. This way there would be no gray. And then you could come back out into the meeting and things that you'd want to share in the public, to Ms. Harmeling's point, to share the process and the procedure that the firm would be going through. You definitely have the right to do that well within your right. So 2 ways that I think you could do it would be A, through a subcommittee, or B, to talk about strategies and then to come out and to share publicly. But that would just be my quick rendition without doing a deeper dive into it.
Okay, any other board members wishing to comment? Mr. Champagne?
Yeah, I believe because it's a search committee or hiring committee for personnel, I think Mr. Wilson's correct. I think we can set those up, as quickly as possible and start hammering away some of the details.
Anyone else? Okay, then we'll have to look at our schedules to see how quickly we can do that. And I will get back to people. Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Hatfield, if you want to handle the business manager vacancy.
Thank you through the chair. As many of you are aware, Mrs. Holmes, thank you again for your service and your dedication to our students in our district. Mrs. Holmes will be leaving us on March 12th. I believe it is, Mrs. Holmes. Yes, thank you. And at this time, I believe the current number was we have 5 applicants for the position. We have Mr. Wilson has set up some meeting or interviews for the position, and I'm going to turn it over to him for a quick update.
Okay, Mr. Wilson.
Certainly, Mrs. Tenza and I could both take this. We actually talked about this today. The position officially closed this afternoon. Mr. Hatfield is correct. There are 5 applicants. We started reviewing candidates this afternoon, and we have started also to set up some interviews. So we are excited about the process, and by the end of this week, we should have our interviews conducted, hopefully. And then we'll alert the board of where we stand in the process. Also, depending on the candidate, he or she's availability, we may have to reach out to the board and see if we can get an interim in. It all is contingent upon their availability. So more to come, more exciting news to come, but we're excited about the process. We're happy that we had applicants come in. And as I said in our initial review this afternoon, we feel that we have some candidates that we are calling in for interviews. So excited about the next steps, and we'll keep the board definitely informed moving forward.
Any questions for Mr. Hatfield or Mr. Wilson concerning that? Okay, then I will move along to the next
Mr.
part.
Mello, I had a question.
Oh, I didn't see you, Mrs. Bruno. You gotta
Sorry.
yell sometimes.
Just wondering what the past practice is as far as the makeup of an interview committee for a central office position. Does it typically include board members? Does it typically include other members of the school community?
Mr. Wilson?
Yep, typically it's the other members of the central office. In this case, would be the associate superintendent and the superintendent. And when we have a final candidate, we will present that person to the Board of Education.
Okay, Mrs. Bruno?
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, then I will move on to the next of the chairman's comments. I mean, I just feel that I've been remiss on 2 areas. Number one, and that is to get the committee of myself and Mrs. Nesteriak and Mr. Champagne to look at a full-time legal firm, because we did hire Beecham and Moses as interim, but we've been so busy with other pressing matters that I put that off. And then the other thing that I wish I could move faster, and that would be I had indicated some CABE training for board members. But again, due to the pandemic and that stuff there, I've also pushed that off, but I have not forgotten about that, because I think it's appropriate for us to get new training every once in a while, and we have not had one of those, and we were not able to have a CABE conference, which gives us some training. So, I think if we are in the education field and we expect our students to learn and our teachers to learn and our administrators to learn, then I think it's apropos for us to learn also, as we sit supposedly at the top of the chain. That's all the comments that I have. Any board members wishing to make comments?
Mr. Stramello, Fred Stanek, if I may.
Yes, you may, Mr. Stanek.
I have several items I would like to address, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
First of all, I do not think it's too early to start thinking about graduation, both high school and middle school graduation. I hope that we can, at a minimum, have a plan so that students and their immediate families will be able to attend. And perhaps if we have a plan for the high school graduation, we could also adopt that same plan for the middle school graduation or the middle school ceremony, so that we don't have to simply cancel it like we were forced to do last year. I think we could set up the high school for a ceremony for the middle school the night before or the night after the graduation at the high school. But I don't think it's too early to start planning to see what the alternatives are. I know a lot will depend upon what the health situation is in June. I would also like to thank Chris Champagne for taking on the responsibility to deal with the public comment issue. I think it's a great undertaking and a great responsibility for the benefit of the public and the board, because the purpose of public comment is for the board to listen to what the people are saying and helping us making decisions. We had extensive discussion last week with regard to reopening of the schools. I understand that some of our area high schools are planning to or have already implemented programming so that the athletes are staying home and learning remotely or will learn remotely. So they're out of the building during the day and will be attending practices after school. That will lessen the number of students and people in the buildings during the day. I'm wondering if we have considered that type of model or that type of plan to maybe deal with some of the issues that Mr. Freund had raised. Because come April 12th, I know Ms. Harmony asked the question, what's going to be different April 12th? But so that something like that may be something we can plan for April 12th. I don't know, and I'd like to hear from the superintendent. Finally, we have been awarded, or we have available to us, the Seymour Board of Education, ESSER funds, emergency, secondary, and elementary school emergency funds through the Coronavirus Act of December 2020. And I'm wondering if any planning has been undertaken to plan how we're going to use the ESSER funds that are coming to us to supplement our budget, but not supplant the budget. So I wonder if Mr. Wilson could address that in his comments.
Yes, I will let Mr. Wilson do that under his superintendent comments, Mr. Stanek, if that's all right with you.
That's fine.
Okay, any other board members wishing to comment? Yes, Ms. Harmling.
Thank you, Mr. Stanek, for your comments. I have two comments as well. One is somewhat related to school reopening. I know that we've been trying to get as many children re-engaged and students re-engaged with school as possible. I, for one, agree with Mr. Stanek, and hopefully we'll add that to the agenda, perhaps after we hear the superintendent's comments on allowing student athletes to choose remote schooling, but also participate, which is not what we did in the fall, but things have changed and my view on it has changed. So I'm in favor of that as well. And in the spirit of expanding access to students, I'm wondering why, and I know I'm not supposed to ask a question, but so my comment is I hope that we will allow for the use of our weight room. It is a big space. It's got super high ceilings. And what really pushed me over the edge for that was knowing that our community center is now having in-person aerobic classes. So with gyms open, with our community center open, all with social distancing, all with the proper protocols, I think it's time to talk about reopening our weight room. Some people might not think it's important, but it is really critical for the conditioning and strength training of our athletes. And when our athletes are conditioned and do proper strength training, they are less likely to get injured. So it is really important. And finally, I'm curious to know if the thinking behind the honor roll of the middle school and the high school has evolved for the third and fourth semesters.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Harmon. Any other board members wishing to comment? Yes, Mrs. Bruno, then Mr. Hatfield.
I would echo, and I brought this up Monday night, providing that choice to all students, and not just athletes, but to students who want to participate in extracurricular activities, but would prefer to be fully remote. If we could expand that and have a conversation about giving that option to kids to be able to opt for temporary full remote and still be able to participate in sports and other extracurriculars. And I would also agree to encourage a conversation about how do we recognize kids who are achieving and achieving those grades to earn them the honor roll or some other way, in addition to all the efforts we're taking to support kids that are struggling.
Thank you, Mrs. Bruno. Any other board members wishing to comment? Yes, Mr. Hatfield.
Thank you. I thought you said I was next, so no, I'm just kidding. No, I just wanted to thank the administrators for last week's presentation. You know, I really appreciated them taking the time to let us know or to give us insight into the actual school buildings. I know it's hard sometimes when we're on the outside looking in, and for them to take the time to really tell us or give us a picture of what was happening. I really appreciate them taking the time on a Thursday evening to do that. The other thing is, again, I want to thank the administration for being a little bit flexible as we voted to update the plan. I appreciate them taking the time to send out that email the other day, which I thought was really detailed and really kind of got to the point and helped to support our families. And hopefully people were able to get as much information from that updated email as possible. So I appreciate that. I also wanted to echo Mr. Stanick's statements. The earlier we could talk about graduation, the better. I know it's such an important time. And I know 3 months ago or 3 months from now, at this point, we spent extensive time talking about that. So the earlier we can start thinking about it now, the better. And again, I will, Bruno or Mrs. Harmering wants to entertain a motion to talk more about the honor roll or other ways that we could support or celebrate our students excelling during this time. I would support that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other board members wishing to comment? One more time. Any other board members wishing to comment? Okay, then I will move along to the superintendent.
Mr. Smell, can I bring up one more thing?
Okay, Mrs. Bruno.
Okay. In addition to the planning for graduation, which I think is great to get going on, I'm also interested in hearing about plans for summer programming, both for our extended school year programs and any other thoughts that the district is considering around either some academic catch-up or some social opportunities for kids during the summer months.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Bruno. Okay, Mr. Wilson.
Okay, good evening. So kind of a long laundry list there. I mean, I could definitely comment on some of the comments. There was a lot of questions in the comment section, but that's okay. First and foremost, March is Board Appreciation Month. So on behalf of the entire staff of Seymour Public Schools, I wanted to thank the board publicly for their dedication and support to all of Seymour's students. It does not go unnoticed. So thank you for all of your hard work and efforts during this month of March. I could take some of the comments and some of the questions kind of not randomly and definitely by no means in order because I was not taking notes, so I apologize. But a couple of the items that were brought up, the conversation centered around the weight room. The athletic directors are having a meeting with Naugatuck Valley Health District to talk about that very thing, about how to reopen and reintroduce the weight room safely. So more to come on that. That we had a meeting today with our athletic director, and he shared that they were going to have a meeting with all the NVL coaches. So we should have some more information on that. In terms of honor roll, had a conversation this morning. Mrs. Tenza and I had a conversation. Mr. Freund and Mrs. Roden are working on that. They have different things in mind in terms of surveying for terms of honor roll as well as for general recognition of students. So once again, more to come on that, but they have started those conversations. In terms of graduation, we had a great conversation with our Director of Safety and Security, as well as Associate Superintendent, as well as Mr. Freund, as well as Mrs. Roden and myself. So conversation on graduation has begun, will continue. Right now, our plan is to have a graduation. We will roll out more of a formalized plan with kind of the chart and the thoughts. We will definitely share that with the board. We were just waiting in terms of right now, we don't know the number. You know, the outside number is still currently at 200. The last time Principal Freund checked, I haven't checked again since then, but I believe 200 was still the number. We're hoping that number gets increased so that we can do an outdoor graduation, even if we had to split it into groups of 2 or 3 for both our high school and our middle schoolers. So definitely more to come on that. We're definitely listening to that and taking that in consideration. In terms of the extended school year, I could leave that up to Dr. Boyle in his report to speak about any other programs in the summer. We have not yet begun to discuss anything with our building administrators. To answer and one of the other comments about, athletes choosing to stay home remotely yet to participate in sports, it was stated by our athletic director and our principal when we had conversations that, it is productive in some ways and counter beneficial in terms of if students are choosing to stay home for fear of the virus, and that is a legitimate fear and a concern, and that's why they would choose to be on temporary full distance learning, then that same fear to come back and to participate in interscholastic sports kind of would defeat that purpose. We understand the importance of sports. I myself am a former athlete, but I think we all have to remember the word being student athlete, and not that eliminates the word student by being a student remotely, but we've talked about that in-person experience several times. We talked about the importance of being in the building. We talked about that. So if they're home because of fear of the virus, to say, but it's okay to come in and play sports, I don't know if that sends the correct message. We could definitely have another conversation about it, but we have had the conversation, and that was the consensus at the end of that said conversation. I think I covered all of the bullets there. If I missed one or two, I apologize, and by all means, feel free to email me and I could get back to you, or someone could ask me now and I can answer it, Mr. Stramello, but I think I, from memory, answered all of the comments, I believe.
I think you did. Are there any questions for the superintendent?
If I may, Mr. Stramello, Fred Stanek again.
Yes.
I'm wondering if there's been any discussion about planning for the application for the ESSER funds.
Oh, yes. I apologize, Mr. Stanek. Thank you. Yes. And Ms. Harmeling had asked that as the subcommittee chair of the finance committee. That's a long one, Ms. Harmeling. We might have to shorten that. Yes. So we do have that. We have begun working and have been working with our administration on that, Mr. Stanek, and we have a rough bulleted list of ideas that we've shared with the administrators. And right now they're bouncing in back and forth to see what they can support and can't support. We'll have another meeting. We'll talk about it again this week and subsequently again next week. By March 17th at the latest, we'll have an Excel spreadsheet with costs shared with the entire board with everything from the ESSER 2 funds that we plan on using to build towards our student learning initiatives. So please also realize that has not even been released yet. I know Sherry's itching over there because that causes her something. So that even has not even been released yet. We're going on the pre-released number that was issued. While we don't think that will change, we're hopeful that it will not, but it has not officially been released, but we have been already working on that. So thank you. I apologize for missing that, Mr. Stanek. That's my mistake.
My understanding, again, Fred Stanek, my understanding is that $1,019,026 is being allocated potentially to Seymour.
That is our understanding as well, and that's what we've based all of our conversations on as well.
Mrs. Holmes.
That is correct.
If you don't mind.
That is correct, and I wanted to just let you know that I did report that in the fiscal committee meeting, that we didn't have any information yet. The last thing I do have in writing is that by March 1st, they were supposed to put something on the e-grants management website. And as of today, they have not done so. I do believe the money that we are awarded is firm. I haven't got any indication that they're going to revise any of the amounts for the districts right now, as of right now. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Stanek.
Yes, thank you very much.
Any other board members? Questions for the superintendent? Okay, I don't Okay, Ms. Harmon's hand came up at the last moment. Go ahead.
Not under board member or superintendent report. So if there's anyone who has something under superintendent report, I'll wait.
Okay.
Nobody?
Oh,
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to add to the agenda discussion and possible action on allowing fully remote students to participate in extracurricular activities.
okay, you would like to add to the agenda, okay?
I'll second Chris Champagne.
Okay, so motion made by Ms. Harmling, seconded by Mr. Champagne to add to the agenda. Okay, Mrs. Bruno,
Yes.
Mr. Champagne,
Chris Champagne, yes.
Mr. Garofalo,
Jim Garofalo, yes.
Ms. Harmling,
Yes.
Mr. Hatfield,
Mr. Hatfield, yes.
Mr. Kubik,
Mr. Kubik, yes.
Ms. Nesteriak,
Beth Mysteriak, yes.
Mr. Stanek,
Fred Stanek, yes.
and Mr. Stramella votes yes. Okay, so we added to the agenda for a discussion. Ms. Harmling, do you have another motion? Or you just want to discuss first?
Well, yes, we can discuss first. So I added to the agenda discussion and possible action. So yeah, I don't need to make a motion quite yet. I definitely recall Mr. Wilson, all the conversation, and it came out of the reopening committee about not letting fully remote students participate in extracurricular activities. And then we did have a board discussion about that in the fall. And, you know, the logic that was in play for there at that time for me was a little bit about fear. And, you know, our numbers were good when we went back into school, and we went back with a hybrid approach intentionally. And, you know, that logic for me was there. Okay, if you're not going to prioritize going to school, that means you really shouldn't be able to participate in extracurricular activities. But here we are, 7 months later, and it's not about fear anymore. It's about students knowing the learning environment that works for them. And it's about placing yourself now in a classroom at the high school that could potentially have 24 students in it. So for me, we have enough remote learning experience under our belts that if students are able to achieve the academic requirements to participate in extracurricular activity, and they are not comfortable being in classrooms of 24 or more, for me, there's just no reason that they shouldn't be able to participate, especially in the spring sports, which are all outdoor. Baseball was, I don't think anybody ever stopped playing baseball because it's so easy to social distance with baseball. So because the times have changed and the pandemic, we've all learned and things have shifted. I think we should absolutely be letting students who want to do full remote learning participate in extracurricular activities.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, Mrs. Bruno, then Mr. Champagne.
My thinking on this has changed as well, and I fully believed in the fall that, you know, the learning needs to come first and the focus on the academics needs to come first. But I agree with Ms. Harmeling that kids know now, they have a sense of how they're best able to access their instruction. I think from the conversations Monday night and at the curriculum committee, both about the challenge we have of being able to get kids in 5 days that really need that in-person learning is based on the percent of our students that are opting for that temporary full remote. So I think we have to get creative in how we can tweak those numbers. And I think also the conversation about what keeps kids engaged. And so being able to participate in the sports, in addition to anxiety and depression. So we know that exercise and regular vigorous exercise is, research has shown that helps treat depression and anxiety. So I think denying that opportunity to kids because they've opted for remote is not the way to go right now.
Okay, Mr. Champagne, you were next.
Thank you. So my opinion on this has also changed, and after listening to, some of the issues that we're having at the high school with class sizes and whatnot, it may not even really be about the athletes, but giving the students who need to get in school the opportunity to enter into that full learning environment. And don't forget, we hold our athletes and students who participate in extracurricular activities, we hold them to a higher standard than normal students. I believe their grades in order to participate have to be a 65 versus everybody else who's a 60 to pass a class. So, if this was a situation where, we could get everybody in and there's no distancing issues, then maybe the view would be a little bit different. But if we can lessen some of the burden in the high school by allowing a handful of kids to participate in other activities and allow our students to get back in, then I would be for that.
Anyone else wishing to speak to the subject? Anyone else who has not had a chance? Okay, then I'll jump in. As a former director of athletics and physical education, I had misgivings about this topic, but I have had some changing in my thoughts also. And hearing Ms. Homling talk about outdoors was a compelling thing for me because it's different than being indoors. Because I was concerned about that aspect of it because the CIAC has a stance on homeschool students who are not allowed to participate in athletics. And I'm talking about regular homeschool students, not remote learning students, that they believe that a student who is homeschooled could have an advantage over a student who is in school when participating. So, but I take that out of the picture because remote learning is different. But I also want to make sure that we don't just focus completely on the athletics part of it, that we also talk about other activities, clubs, and that stuff there, because I don't want us to just concentrate solely on sports. That's my opinion. Anyone else wishing to speak to the subject?
Ed, this is Beth.
Okay, go ahead, Beth.
Yeah, I agree with all the comments we heard tonight. I think it's important to give, now that we know new information, vaccines are rolling out, maybe not to those affected by the sports, but caregivers and family members. So I'd fully support allowing this. I think your point about extracurricular activities is a good one. I don't know how we differentiate in terms of, I think that we'll have to leave that up to the logistics of those meetings and how that happens. But it's important, especially after reading the tech and curriculum minutes around the struggles that we're seeing in the schools. It's important to give as many options as we can for social emotional issues for our students.
Thank you. Anyone else who has not spoken yet? Anyone else? Okay. Yes, Ms. Harmon.
I'd like to make a motion to change the reopening committee recommendations on participation in extracurricular activities to allow students who choose to do fully remote school to participate in extracurricular activities, assuming all requirements are met as per board policy.
Okay, is there a second to Ms. Harmley's motion? Mrs. Bruno, I see your hand up.
Yep. Kristen
You will
Bruno, I'll
second that motion?
Through the chairman, point of
Yes.
order.
Yes.
No disrespect to any motion or second, but I just want to go through the superintendent to quickly ask, do we actually need a motion to do that? Or can we implore or ask, I should say, the superintendent to change or to update the procedure, so to speak? Because again, we fall under that gray area of pandemic authority. So with all due respect, I just wanted to clarify.
So either way, Mr. Hatfield, thank you for asking for the clarification. It could be a motion to direct the superintendent to update the procedures followed where students that are on temporary full discipline can participate in extracurricular and athletics, and/or you just make them a motion. Either way, it would be appropriate. I think the cleaner way, to your point, would be to, just direct me to do that. This way here, it's just an update in the plan personally, but however you wish to do it is fine.
Okay, I will go to our parliamentarian. We have a motion on the floor. What is your sense, Mr. Stanek?
The chair should entertain the motion and ask for a vote on the motion unless the motion is withdrawn.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stanek. So then I will call the vote on the motion then, since it's there. Mrs. Bruno,
Kristen Bruno, I vote yes.
Mr. Champagne,
Chris Champagne, yes.
Mr. Garofalo, Mr. Garofalo, you have to unmute yourself. You're still not unmuted, Mr. Garofalo. You have to unmute yourself, Mr. Garofalo.
All right, sorry.
You did it, but then you're back.
I vote yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Garofalo. Ms. Harmling,
Ms. Harmling votes yes.
Mr. Hatfield,
Jay Hatfield votes yes.
Mr. Kubik,
Mr. Kubik votes yes.
Ms. Nasteriak,
Beth Nastiriak, yes.
Mr. Stanek,
Ted Stanek votes yes.
and Mr. Stramello reluctantly votes yes. Passes unanimously. Okay, moving along now to, we have the information. We have the Seymour Middle School, Bungie Elementary, Chapel Lopesti Elementary. Any questions for those three reports? Okay, I don't see any hands. So I'll move along. Dr. Boyle, do you wish to report?
Based on what I submitted to the group, the numbers again are largely unchanged. I know there was a question referenced with regard to extended school year. I'm not sure if I am being asked to respond to that now or at a later meeting.
Well, that's your choice, Dr. Boyle, if you want to speak to it now, if you're prepared.
I'm prepared to respond to it preliminarily. This is the time of the school year where our students are having their annual reviews. PPT meetings, the meetings where we plan for students for special ed, occur throughout the year, but we tend to have their once a year meeting where we revamp their program about this time every year, and it usually concludes about April 1st. So I don't have numbers of students, but from a programming standpoint, I can say we are moving forward with our traditional extended school year program. We'll be running 2 different programs, a 4-week program and a 6-week program for students that require it to ensure that they don't regress over the summer for academic or social reasons primarily. But it will run, we're planning on it running in person like we've done historically. But in the background, we are planning for if there were a need to do it in another means other than in person. But I'm moving forward with every anticipation that will be in person as we usually are. It's a 4-day-a-week program, Monday through Thursday, 9 to 12. Both programs will start on July the 5th, Monday, July the 5th.
Any questions for Dr. Boyle? Okay, yes, Ms. Harmling.
It's a very small thing, but I think the 5th might be the national holiday, Mr. Boyle.
I didn't see any indication that that it's a national holiday, but I'll review it. But that's
Well, Or at a minimum, it would be the day that most employees have off.
That
Correct.
may in fact be
Yeah.
true because the 4th is a Sunday this
Right,
year.
right. I'm sure you would have happened upon that before schedules were released, but I heard the 5th and said, I'll say it.
I appreciate that. I'll double check that.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, then we will move along then to the staff hirings and the staff resignations, both certified. Okay, as Mr. Stanek remembers, I like it when people take the time to really explain their retirement or resignations. And I was taken completely aback by Mrs. Droze's comments. Having worked and supervised Mrs. Droze, I thought her letter of retirement was wonderful. And we're sorely going to miss Mrs. Droze. Not that we're not going to sorely miss some of our other people, but I could speak from personal bias that Mrs. Droze will be missed. Okay, public comment. Although, does any board members wish to speak about any of the hirings or resignations? Yes, Mrs. Bruno.
I would just like to ask the superintendent to work with the athletic director to fill those outdoor track positions, please.
Okay, any other comments? Interesting that our outdoor track coach switched from outdoor track to tennis, but that's fine. Okay, Mr. Champagne, public comment number 2.
I don't have anything.
Okay, Mr. Hatfield.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would like to add to the agenda, if it's appropriate at this time, I'd like to make a motion to add to the agenda to enter an executive session to discuss strategies about a potential administrative claim. And the board invites the business manager, the associate superintendent, and the superintendent.
Second.
I'd like to add that.
Okay. You're adding to the agenda, Mr. Hatfield.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and who seconded that? Mr. Champagne, I see. Okay, is there any discussion needed? Okay, Mrs. Bruno.
I vote yes.
Okay, Mr. Champagne,
Yes.
Mr. Garofalo,
Garofalo, yes.
Ms. Harmling.
Ms. Harmeling, yes.
Okay, Mr. Hatfield, excuse me.
Mr. Hatfield, yes.
Okay, Mr. Kubik.
Mr. Kubik, yes.
Mrs. Nesteriak.
Beth Mysteriak, yes.
Mr. Stanek.
I'm not sure if the motion falls within the reasons for executive session, so I'm going to vote no.
Okay. And Mr. Stramella votes yes. Okay, Mr. Hatfield.
Through the chair, Mr. Wilson, do we have, can you update us for executive session link?
Would you like me to provide the link, Mr. Hatfield?
Okay,
No.
but if I can, before we do that, Jay, we added to the agenda, okay.
Motion.
We need
And-
motion. Sorry, I'll make another motion. You're right. So I'd like to make a motion, excuse me, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to enter an executive session to discuss strategies about a potential administrative claim. The board invites the business manager, the associate superintendent, and the superintendent.
Second.
Okay, seconded again by Mr. Champagne. Okay, so we're gonna move into executive session if this motion passes. Okay, Mrs. Bruno.
Can I ask a point of order?
Yes,
Can we ask the parliamentarian if the wording needs to be adjusted?
Mr. Stanek.
I'm not sure, what what an administrative claim is. I'm not sure. What is it pending litigation?
Mr. Wilson, can you address that?
I can. I believe the motion is appropriate because under one of the reasons going to executive session, it would be to discuss either a pending claim or a pretending claim that may lead to litigation. Therefore, I feel that the motion stated by Mr. Hatfield is appropriate to enter into an executive session.
If I may, is there a written letter of claim?
I believe that potentially could be discussed in the executive session, and it's a strategy about that.
Okay.
If there's no pending litigation, but it's a claim, there has to be something in writing that came to the board asserting a claim for us to enter executive session.
Mr. Wilson?
I understand. I believe the term potential claim that could be as a result of the issue being talked about and the strategy to address it, I think will answer the questions. I think anything discussed in public would hinder that opportunity to do that. Therefore, an executive session is appropriate.
Mr. Chairman, Jim Garofalo.
Yes.
My question would be directed to Mr. Stanek. Mr. Stanek, is it your presumption that if this were not a legitimate reason for calling an executive session, that we might be possibly in violation of the Freedom of Information Act?
Mr. Stanek?
Fred Stanek, yes, but I'm questioning because I'm not sure exactly what the basis of the claim is, but.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if
Yes.
that's the case, then perhaps a solicitation of our attorney is in order as to whether or not the way the motion has been phrased would not cause us conflict by moving into that executive session and thereby be in violation of Freedom of Information Act.
The problem is if we had counsel present, he would have reviewed this matter ahead of time. I haven't reviewed it. I'm not counsel to the board. I'm just inquiring because I know it's important that we only enter executive session for those specific reasons allowed by 1-200 of the general statutes. So maybe what Mr. Garofalo is saying is the matter should be tabled to allow counsel to review it first.
What's the board's pleasure?
You have the motion in a second at this point, unless there be further discussion, then a vote, roll call is in order. Is it not, Mr. Chairman?
Well, Mr. Stanek said the motion could be amended. That's why I asked. Or the motion could be tabled. And I didn't hear that, Mr. Garofalo. Okay, so since I don't hear it to be tabled, I will take a vote. Mrs. Bruno?
Kristen Bruno, I'll vote yes.
Mr. Champagne?
Chris Champagne, yes.
Mr. Garofalo?
Jim Garofalo, no.
Ms. Harmling?
We're voting on a motion to table, is that correct?
No, we're not. We're voting on the motion to go in executive session.
Oh, I vote yes to go into executive session. Thank you for clarifying.
Okay, Mr. Hatfield?
J. Hatfield, yes.
Mr. Kubik?
Peter Kubik, yes.
Mrs. Nesteriak?
Beth Nastiriak, yes.
Mr. Stanek?
Fred Stanek, no.
And Mr. Stamell votes yes. The motion carries 7-2 to go in executive session. Now, Mr. Hatfield, explain to us how we're doing this.
Mr. Stramello, if I may, Fred Stanek, we have another matter that we're going to go into executive session on.
I know that.
Otherwise, we're going to have to come back, vote on that, and go back into executive session again.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, because I don't think we can combine the two.
I don't think so either, but I've seen it done elsewhere.
Yep, yep.
Through the chairman, Mr. Champagne, I believe, has sent us a link, and we will enter into that link, and then we will come back to the original link, and then we will get a secondary link for the second executive session. Thanks to Mr. Champagne.
Okay.
Yeah, if I may, that's in your Board of Ed email.
Okay.
Mr. Champagne, is it, through the chair, is it possible for you to make it blue for some people that sometimes it's tough if it's not a click link?
That's a good point, Mr.
Yep,
Hatfield.
let me do that. I'm sorry. I'll fix that and resend.
Thank you, Mr. Champagne.
Okay, so we'll have to wait for that to come.
So through the chairman, if you already have the link, you could copy and paste. Otherwise, you can wait for the click link. I'm going to enter into the click link or the cut and paste.
Okay. I don't have it yet. Let me see.
Okay, I just resent. It should be a hyperlink now.
Okay. I don't see it.
Ooh.
Okay, so we returned to the regular meeting at 9:35. What is the board's pleasure now?
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to move that the board enter into executive session to discuss the employment of Mrs. Sherry Holmes, business manager. The board invites Mrs. Holmes into the session.
Second.
Seconded by, who was that, Chris?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Okay, Mrs. Bruno,
Yes.
Mr. Champagne,
Yes.
Mr. Garofalo,
Yes.
Ms. Harmling, Ms. Harmling, are you there?
You don't see her on.
Yeah, no one else is in the waiting room.
I'll go to Mr. Hatfield first. Mr.
Jay
Hatfield,
Hatfield, yes.
Mr. Kubik,
I don't believe he's on.
Mrs. Nesteriak,
Beth Mysteriak, yes.
Mr. Stanek,
Stanek, yes.
and Mr. Stramella, yes. I'll wait a little bit for the other members to join us. Jay, you want to contact Peter and I'll contact Kristen?
Sure. I just texted him. Do you want me to call?
Well, yeah, I texted Ms. Harmling and she asked about the executive session too, and I just texted her back that we need to go into a regular meeting first. And so I sent it again. Okay. Hi, Kristen. We're trying to get Peter to come back too.
Couldn't you guys have voted to go in without us if you got a quorum?
I did, but I figured I'd still wait for you guys. We did vote.
I missed the part about going back to this meeting. All I heard was, can you make sure the link works for the second meeting?
Okay. Are you voting yes to go into the second
Yes.
executive session? Thank you.
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Sorry.
And Jay's hunting down Peter.
Quick question, if I could.
Yeah, sure.
If you're not here to vote, can you go into the executive session?
Fred?
That's a question of first impression. I don't see why not. If Peter's in the second session already, he's a member of the board.
Okay, yeah, I just wasn't sure.
But I've never heard that question asked before. Good question.
All right. Now, Chris, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
When we leave the regular session, do we just leave? Or can we just shrink it? We should leave, correct?
Yeah, I would say leave, yeah.
Okay. That's what I thought. I just wanted to verify it. I'm wondering if we could excuse Mr. Wilson. Do any board members object?
No, I don't object to just going into executive session. If you guys have voted on it, you've got a quorum. Peter can join us. He's probably there like I was.
Yep.
Through the chair, I am on the phone with him. He's trying to log on.
Okay.
Ed, to answer your question.
Which question?
On the, about asking Mr. Wilson to leave.
Yeah.
At least on the agenda, for item 10, executive session, you only show the board inviting Mrs. Holmes.
Correct.
So when you say, do you need the superintendent? Are you planning to invite him in?
No.
Okay. All right.
But he's being dutiful and staying around. I don't want to just tell him to.
He's lonely.
Oh, he's lonely? I can think of a lot of better places to be. Disrespect to all of us. I got a couple of grandkids that I can spend a lot more fun time with. All right, Peter's here. Peter, are you voting to go into executive session?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now then it passes 9-0. Now we leave this meeting and go into the second executive session. Good night, Mike.
Good night, all. Have a good night.
Good night.
All right, P, I'm sending it to you again, just so you have it. You're back, Mr. Jamal. You're back. I thought you lost power.
Yeah.
Don't say that, Jay. I have to put the little dog out yet.
Oh, God. It's gonna be awful
Well, you
windy
just-
for him.
Yes, I have to. If I don't put her out, I don't want to have any soiling in the house.
Yeah, I know.
And Kristen has two of them to put out.
Yeah. And they are princess, they're a prince and a princess. They don't like the rain, they don't like the snow.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, that's what.
Wow.
Mine's a little, she's not bad. She don't like rain.
Sometimes I have a doggy door, so sometimes one of them will stick just their head out the doggy door and be like, yeah, no, not today, and come right back in.
That's
Oh,
cute.
no, before I forget, so you, me, and Mr. Jamal will connect tomorrow or the next day, Wednesday.
Yeah, all righty. So we left the executive session. Now would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Jim Garofalo moves. Who seconds?
I think that was Mr. Champagne.
It was me, but that's fine.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll second that motion.
All righty, I got you, Jim.
All right.
Okay, Kristen, we don't need to do it individually, I don't think, to adjourn, if I remember right. Okay, so the meeting is adjourned at 10:13. Good night, everybody.
Night.
Stay
Good night.